Hello and welcome to another episode of the Academy Countdown, where we look at all the films nominated for Best Picture at this year's Oscars. My name is Zachary Trevino, and today I'm joined by a very special guest.
Introduce myself?
Yeah.
My name's Dr. Adam Schuster. I'm a professor in the English department here at Cal State Bakersfield.
And today we are looking at the movie Train Dreams. And I just gotta open up and say, what a beautiful movie, right? I mean, this movie is shot like no other. I mean, it captures nature in such a beautiful way.
Yeah, I was reading something from like the cinematographer. They did like an interview with Variety, and they said something like that they had shot the whole, 99% of the film was shot with natural light.
Oh, that's...
And so, you know, when you're walking through the forest, when you're in the cabin with the candles, like all of that just kind of came out really, obviously, beautifully, and I don't know, it was really beautiful for me.
Yeah, and I mean, not even like too in the weeds in like movie making knowledge, but that is such a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
Natural lighting. I mean, you have to flush out everything. I mean, this studio has so much lighting in it. Imagine we did this with natural light. We could never.
Well, think about like if you're trying to get. I was thinking about this when I was watching the movie because I was rewatching it last night. And if you're trying to get like a specific shot, like in the golden hour, like dusk or something. And I think they said this in the interview too, but it was something like if you are trying to get this shot, you have like an hour to get it. And then that means you only have so many, takes you can do. So everyone has to be firing on all cylinders. The camera has to be just right. Like I think that was what I was thinking about. I was watching it. As I was rewatching it, was how difficult it would have been to capture those shots the way that they captured them.
Yeah, but I mean, like with how they were able to do it and how they were able to make this movie look like, even when this movie like could have lulled at points, like you're still looking at such striking, such powerful and evocative imagery. Yeah. I mean, it's truly something. And I mean, and just like contrasting off of the scenery, I thought the performances were really strong in this movie too.
I loved Joel Edgerton, right? Is that how you pronounce his last name?
It's either Edgerton or Egerton.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it is, but either way, I love him. I remember him he did this like horror movie for A24 called It Comes at Night. Did you ever see that?
No, I'd never heard of the guy.
Really? Okay, so he was in that, and then he was in The Great Gatsby with Leo. He was he was like Tom Buchanan.
Yeah.
So like he's like done things, but he's never been like at least he's very rarely been the main character. So I've always kind of liked him kind of in those roles that he's done. And then he's, this kind of quiet, obviously emotionally, devastated figure, but also like, so he doesn't say a lot, but then he's just like very expressive with his emotion or with his facial expressions and everything. I don't know. I just watching him on camera, I could watch him. It was only like an hour and 40 or whatever, but I could have watched it for another 2 hours, just him on screen for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we should get into the plot because I think you have to kind of digest this movie as a whole.
Yeah.
And so this movie takes place in like pretty early, not colonial America, but like during the...
It was like early
20th century. I think it's 1917 is when they specifically say.
Yeah, and then I think 1920, through that moment, yeah.
And so it follows this guy, Robert, who is a family man, but also a construction man, building the railroads that are very much prevalent at the time, like just advancing west. And it's...
takes place in like Idaho,
yeah, it's in Idaho,
Oregon, like kind of like the Pacific Northwest region. He's a railroad man, but also like a logger.
And it's kind of tackling the kind of mindset and like the sense of self in such a kind of like progressive era, like in the era of like cultivation. And it's kind of like how one is able to find oneself and like find a sense of being in such a like mobile time. Because I mean, he has a family, but also he has to go leave his family for months at a time to go work on this railroad. And he's working with men who have basically nothing but work to do. And so he's very much like an interesting contrast. And like, honestly, I think the character of Robert himself is such a almost like a stand-in for like in any man in this time period. And it's such an interesting way to structure a character.
Yeah, there's like a rugged everyman kind of feel that he has. And you're right, like it's a moment of like rapid industrialization, right? They're expanding west. You've got like deforestation to some degree because the loggers are tearing down all these beautiful massive trees that have been there for hundreds of years. But these guys are all kind of like, they're all itinerant, right? They're just moving around. And so there's like this question of like individual, like how do they fit within this space? how do they hold on to family and connection and community when they're asked to kind of, take on these roles that are necessarily isolating. So it was that kind of interesting dynamic within the natural backdrop that I thought was really interesting for me.
And like something that's very interesting is I wanted to have your take on this actually. Like, what did you think of like the conversations on like race and like otherness in this film? Because that's very much like it plays a certain aspect of this film, definitely.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think watching it, we can see the beautiful paperback copy of Train Dreams. This was the novella that the movie was based on. And I thought like the film definitely tried to gesture towards some of this history because it's there, right? When you talk about the founding of the railroad, we have like Chinese immigration as part of that conversation. And in the film, at the beginning, we have a Chinese railroad worker who is attacked at the beginning of the film, and I think he's killed, right? At the beginning of it.
and it's like we have a Robert kind of interjecting. He's like, he doesn't know what he did. He's very interested in like the lifestyle and the culture of these other people, which is very much a different like ideology than most would have at this time. And then he gets thrown off, and then he's almost like haunted by the visages of him throughout the rest of the film.
Yeah, so what's interesting about the book is that scene is there, and yet the book's character, Robert Grenier, is much more like actively involved in this attack, right?
Oh,
and
really?
He does step back a little bit. He doesn't actually commit the act himself, but he is much more involved in helping these men try to carry it out. So the point is like the movie gestures towards engaging in some of those conversations. I think the movie also kind of doesn't quite go far enough into that complexity, which is really haunting and really devastating. So I guess I was just really interested in the way that the movie would gesture towards some of that complex, problematic history, but also scale it back when in the novella, it's much more difficult to kind of work through. Yeah.
And so I was curious because I mean you read the novella, and I was wondering like was there any other striking things that you thought the movie portrayed very well, or that you thought maybe the movie like took a different stance on outside of just that one moment?
Yeah, so I think that's a good question. I think like, and it's funny. I was looking at Justin Chang's review from the New Yorker, and he said this too, that the movie, and I actually really enjoyed the movie. So this isn't necessarily a criticism on my part, but he felt that the movie was a little more tidy and that's actually one of the words in his title for his review. But it's very tidy in terms of how it presents some of the issues. And so that first instance with the Chinese railroad worker, right, and Robert Grenier's relationship to him. There's also a scene that happens really quickly in the movie where there's like this guy who's like wounded in the woods, and he's kind of leaning against a tree, and Robert comes and like gives him water out of his boot or something. And we're told a little bit how he's going to think back on that for the rest of his life. But in the book itself, that guy who's leaning against the tree, he actually has committed like an atrocious, like heinous crime against a young girl, right? So the point I'm making is that a lot of the like really difficult content, not a lot of it, some of the really difficult content in the book, the movie kind of just takes out, right? And I think part of the reason why they did that is to make the message of the movie, which you talked about, right, in terms of like, the role of like humans in the natural world, right, or our place in time, or like the scale of human suffering, right, all of that stuff that's in the movie that I think is really interesting and exciting. In order to make that super clear to the audience, I feel like they removed some of the maybe moral complexity that's in the book. And so, again, that's not necessarily a criticism, because it's an adaptation. It's not like a one-to-one, let's follow the story exactly as it was. But it was something that I noticed, right, in terms of how to make the message in the film not bogged down by some of the really difficult material that's in the book itself.
Just kind of clean up the overall kind of like vehicle that is the movie.
Yeah, because even at the end of the movie, right, we have the ending scene where he's flying in the plane or whatever. I'm not sure why that doesn't really help me tell the story. I loved that scene.
Yeah.
I cried at that scene, right? I will cry in movies, and that scene got me. But it also kind of just like brings together the message in a really nice, clean way, right? And that was one of the criticisms that this critic for the New Yorker mentioned. The book ends in this really weird way. There's a scene in the movie where he goes to see a kind of a wonder show, and there's like a wolf boy. Like, do you remember this? I don't know. It happens so fast, right? The book ends with that scene, and it ends with like the crowd kind of at first laughing at him because they can tell it's not real, but then also this boy kind of like lets out this crazy like howling sound that like rattles the the stage and the people in the audience, and it just kind of ends there. And so, in terms of like the messaging of the movie being super clear versus the complexity of the book, like there's differences there. And I'm of two minds because I obviously we love literature, we love film,
Yeah.
we love complexity. The film kind of told us the meaning a little bit more, but it still worked for me because I definitely, like I said, I cried at the end. So I still was very moved by it, even if it did kind of seem like it took off some of the hard edges.
It traded out some of the kind of ambiguity for finality.
I think that's right. But I liked it. Like,
Exactly.
I really did like it.
It's a serviceable ending for very different reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, there's multiple ways to kind of multiple ways to skin a cat, and there's multiple ways to tell this story, and both have their aspects at work and their detractors. But I mean, I think I haven't read the book, but I mean, it seems like that's also a very interesting way to kind of end this story because I mean, this movie is bleak.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I always thought of Robert throughout this movie as kind of a harbinger of death. I mean, wherever he goes, it's nothing bad happening to him, but it's this kind of wave of destructive chaos that haunts him almost as much as like the other worker. Like it feels like there's this air around him, especially like later when he's sleeping in the burned kind of area. You just kind of feel that kind of decrepit like loneliness kind of surround him.
Yeah, but what's interesting is like on the one hand, I really like that reading because, there's something that said, I forgot what the character is, like Arn Peoples or something. It's William H. Macy's character. And he talks about like what we're doing to the natural world, right? We're tearing down these trees. Like at first the trees are like, we're in a relationship with them, like in terms of like, this inhabiting the same space. But then when we start tearing them down, it's war, right? And that's where the violence starts. And he has that moment where he's wondering if what happened to his family is in response to what he either like allowed to happen to the Chinese railroad worker. So it does feel like there's something being said about the ramifications of our roles when it comes to deforestation, right? Industrialization. So maybe there's something there in terms of like these are the effects of what we've done to the world or something.
No, and it feels like the messages are even more powerful because this is in such a far off like past time. I mean, people are thinking about like, oh wow, look at the damage we're causing to the world now with all this deforestation back in 1917. And so for it to sit with you and just kind of think about the evolution of our world and the evolution of how society like has just grown and more amassed this kind of consumption of itself. It just kind of like, it's kind of bleak, but it's also like interesting to get perspectives from such a bygone era too.
I think what's interesting too is that it's two things at once, because on the one hand, you're right, we have this like, maybe it's a harbinger of death, this figure. We have a really bleak story, right? There's so much devastation that's wreaking havoc beyond just the event of that devastation. And yet at the same time, there were other moments in the film where it's like, these things didn't matter. By which I mean, like, there was a moment where this is in the future, and he's like riding a train and he sees the old bridge they worked on, and they're like, oh yeah, in the future this new bridge is gonna, or this new train track is gonna be laid, and so it'll render that one obsolete. Almost as though like that history just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then there was the other moment where he's speaking to the woman who is like surveying the land after the burn, and she's like, oh, it's almost like the fire never happened. Right. Whereas for us, watching the movie, it's like this is the thing that's like destroyed this man's life. It's haunted him.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that we have like attention to real devastation and the ramifications or the aftermath of that devastation, and then this other scale where it's like, and yet it's all just like a little piece of this larger thing that you would think minimizes it, but doesn't.
Yeah, and I think like the ending of this movie, which now I know is kind of additive to the book. I think the ending of this movie kind of drives it home even more, where we see his overgrown house, and then we hear about the fate of Robert and how much how little impact to the grand scheme of everything it had, but how much impact it had to us, the people who had just watched this man's life transpire over the last like 100 minutes. Yeah. And so I just think this movie, it made you feel so big, but also so small, and it was such a cerebral experience.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to what we talked about with the cinematography of it, where there's the one scene where the camera seems to be like attached to the tree that's being felled or whatever, And so you have that moment, you're with the tree as it falls, and then you have all these different shots of like the the characters, and then what they're looking at, and then the scale of the tree. And so I feel like there's something, this is speaking to like the different scales of emotion that I think the movie was offering. I think that the way that it was shot lends itself to us experiencing those different scales, right? The one hand, like the deeply human devastation and trauma, and then on the other hand, like this kind of not even a planetary scale, but like this larger scale that shows how small these things are, these moments are, these lives are. When you look at like tree time of like hundreds of years and these massive things,
it plays.
The camera, I think, was helping us see that, for, at least as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, I mean, even the idea of this all being centered around a logging camp is so interesting because these things, these huge trees, do take like years upon years to be able to be made, but they get felled in so like short of time, and they just have to keep working. I mean, like even when the people face their own devastation, I mean, there's even a line in the movie where they go, "Well, the war doesn't stop for us loggers." Like, I mean, it's just so, it just plays so much with that kind of perspective of time, from the human perspective or the natural perspective.
Yeah, and you know what I loved, to just go into that, the shots where they would, the loggers or the men who died during the work, how they would hammer their boots to the trees. It was like, just, let's gesture towards the fact that like they were here and they did the thing. And then over time you see the tree kind of, or something grow around this shoe, so it's become a part of it, right? Maybe it's a little on the nose, but I really liked that. I thought it was like very stunning with the music and like the shot. I thought that was really cool.
It's striking imagery. I mean, when I watched the trailer, that was like the one kind of shot that really stuck in my head, because it's just the two boots and then just a railroad spike driven into the tree. Yeah. And then it brings the question. It's like, well, one day this like memory is going to be felled. Yeah. Like, it's just, I don't know, it just brings in kind of more auxiliary thoughts too. Yeah. And so, okay, so that's the movie, but now I kind of want to move into our last section, talking about like the awards. And I don't know how much you follow the Oscars, but I would say, do you think this movie has a shot come March 15th when we actually get to see what wins what?
Yeah, so tell me if I'm wrong, but from what I can remember, Train Dreams is nominated for Best Picture, Best Cinematography, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Song. And so I'm sure you're thinking about Best Picture, right?
I believe so. I mean, we're talking about Best Picture. We're talking about the Best Picture films. But as we've kind of deciphered, like, while no film, or only one film can win, but there could also be other avenues for other films to flourish also. And then I think like cinematography, this is a rough one. Like, this is a tough one to beat.
Yeah, I agree. If I was trying to think of those four categories, which one this had the best shot to win, it's that one for sure, as far as I'm concerned. In terms of Best Picture, I mean, you've been having these conversations, you probably know better than me, but it seems like it's a two-horse race, would you say?
Some could decipher it as such.
Okay. I think that what I've heard or what people have said is that it does seem to be a one battle after another versus Sinners situation. Now, you've had a lot of conversations, so maybe I'm wrong there. So, but I do think of it a little bit that way, and so I don't think that this movie has a shot to win. I think it's absolutely deserving of the nomination, and I think it's really cool that you have, indie films, like this is like an independent film, like having an independent film with a much smaller budget than One Bad After Another or something like that. Like, to be in the conversation and have people see it, I think that that's already win in and of itself. I don't know that it's got a real shot to win Best Picture. I will say, just because I was talking about how much I appreciated him at the beginning of this conversation, I wish that Joel Edgerton was nominated for an acting category. I just thought he was like so good in it, and like to be able to say so little and yet affect us in such a way. Yeah, I thought that was like a little bit of a snub. But so for me, I agree. I think that like cinematography, it's got to be up there in terms of like real candidate.
Yeah, I mean, for just the sole fact alone, they do natural lighting. I mean, you don't hear about it much, and when you do, it's like Barry Lyndon, which are these like Renaissance, almost level screens. But
I will say, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I will say in terms of my pick for Best Picture, I don't know if I'll have to think about this a little more. I'm not sure I have the pick locked down, but I will say, of the ones that I've seen, only two have moved me to tears. This one and Hamnet, right?
Hamnet was beautiful.
Right,
also.
And so I think like there's something, I'm not saying that we need to have like it's not like a cry test, and like, well, whichever one makes you cry is the one that I think should win. But I will say, like, in terms of what movies or what films like move you to tears, like that's to me, that's like a signal of like an aesthetic experience. Like this is artwork that I'm kind of taking in, and so I think that does elevate this movie in my eyes. Just the fact that I had that reaction, you know.
Yeah, no, and I mean that's like the backbone of this show. I mean, to be able, I mean, like there can be front runners there, and there can be, and people can just naysay all these movies, but like to take the time to celebrate each one, it's like super fun, and it's the movie earned it. I mean, it earned its nomination, and while it might not get the win, I feel like it also deserves like discussion.
Yeah, it
as
deserves
just as much
discussion.
as any of its peers.
It deserves discussion. It deserves attention. Like I said, I feel like I haven't seen a lot of conversation about it as a nominee. A lot of people that I've talked to haven't seen it yet. They're like, oh, I think I remember seeing it. What's it? I don't know what it's about though. Or like, oh, it's okay. Well, I don't know. That sounds a little slow. I'm not sure I'm gonna be interested in it. I think just this conversation for me just says how much I think it warrants views.
Well, that is all of our time, unfortunately.
Perfect.
And I want to take the time to thank everybody who takes time out of their day to watch this episode of the Academy Countdown. My name has been Zachary Trevino.
I'm Adam Schuster.
And thank you all for watching.